Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for the Township of Georgian Bay for Friday, July 15th, 2022. This morning, there is a public meeting scheduled for 2 consent applications and 3 minor variance applications. I'll briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized at the meeting. First, the Secretary-Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and whom notice of each of the hearings was circulated for the applications being considered. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any other information that is relevant. The Secretary-Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there, the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose, and the public will have an opportunity to speak to the applications being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision of the applications. The consent applications being considered this morning are B21-22 for 38378 Georgian Bay Shore and B22-05 for 1272 Haskets Drive. The minor variance applications being considered are A22-13 for 1272 Haskets Drive, and we'll deal with those together. And A21-10 for 12494 Georgian Bay Shore. And finally, A21-34 for 83 John Buckler Road. Before we begin, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Yes, Member Matthews. I think you're muted, sir.
There we go. Sorry about that. I just want to make it clear, the first application, whilst it's a wonderful last name, it is no relation to me. I have met the applicant at our ski club, but that's the extent of my knowledge of him. So I just want to make that perfectly clear that there is no pecuniary interest in that.
Thank you, Member Matthews, and so noted. So seeing no other declarations of pecuniary interest, I would ask that everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes of our previous meeting. And I have a resolution moved by Member Coutier, seconded by Member Caddo. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of June 10, 2022 as circulated. All those in favor? The motion is carried. I would also have a resolution moved by Member Matthews and seconded by Member Ferguson. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment adopts the agenda dated July 15, 2022. All those in favor? That motion is carried. I would ask then for the Secretary-Treasurer to advise regarding notification.
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may also have been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you very much. And our first application this morning is, as noted, B21-22 for Matthews. Has there been any correspondence on this application, Secretary, Madam Secretary?
I normally say this after the presentation. However, one letter of correspondence in support of deferral was received from the District of Muskoka, and one letter of no objection was received from Hydro One.
Okay, and the reason for reading that in advance, we do have a recommendation in the staff report to defer this application. So in some previous meetings, we have gone directly to the deferral and save the comments and the reading of the report for when the application is brought together before a committee. And I am recommending that we do that here in the essence of saving time. Are there any objections to moving forward with that?
No.
No objections?
Mr. Jarvis?
Yes, you're muted, Mr. Jarvis.
Not anymore. I'm not. I'm just curious. I know. I think we do have the ability to, I guess, in essence, ignore the deferral recommendation. Go ahead with approval if we feel it's justified. Is that not the case?
That is, and so my intention, Member Matthews, is to read the resolution, and the recommendation in the resolution is for deferral. So if we don't wish to defer, then we can go back and go into it.
Do you mind?
Okay with
I have no objection either way, just so people know. But is it possible to just take a straw vote in advance to see where we stand on this, so that we can decide sort of before we move ahead with the deferral whether it's worth discussing further?
Well, by all means. Are there any members of the committee who would prefer to hear the planning report before we move to reading the resolution? And if you are in favor of hearing the planning report, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Member Kuchar.
If I may, I think the one advantage of hearing the report is that if we have any particular questions that might possibly be answered by the time our second go at this, presuming we end up with a deferral, at this time we can raise some questions that might be more fruitfully answered the next time this comes in front of us.
Okay, and I appreciate that response, and I can see just from the appearance here that is shared by some of the other members. I just said, Mr. Matthews, I'm having a little difficulty seeing whether you're raising your hand or not. So,
Well, that's because I didn't. I could go either way. I think Member Kuchar raises a very good point. That perhaps the planning report will help us with a decision either today or in the future.
Okay, then I think we're all sort of on the same fence. So let's go ahead, and I would ask then the planner to proceed with the planning report.
Good morning. Can everybody see me? I've got my headset on today because my children are home. Everybody, my name is Jennifer Gaudette. I'm a planner with JL Richards. We are the consultants to the township for planning, and I will be presenting this application on behalf of my colleague. Just give me one moment here where I attempt to share my screen. I want to make sure it's the right one. Let me know if you can see my space background.
Yes, we see it.
Yep.
And you should now see the PowerPoint.
Yes, we see that.
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be presenting application B2122, known as Matthews. The applicant is Mr. Kevin Matthews. He is represented by John Jackson, a professional planner. The address is 38378 Georgian Bay Shore, and the purpose of the application is to facilitate the creation of one lot by severing the parcel approximately into 2 equal parcel properties, and it's part of an estate settlement. So the proposed severed lot is intended to be transferred to the co-executor of the estate. Here on the location map, you can see the property and the proposed severed to the north. Subject lands are located on the tip of the Tadanac Peninsula within the Wawa-Tacey waterfront community. Subject property is irregularly shaped and is approximately 5.5 hectares in size. It is accessible only by water, and it is privately serviced. The applicant proposes to sever approximately 2.8 hectares of land from the subject property. So that would be this north section here, which has a total area, so that the total parcel is approximately 5.5 hectares. There's a cottage at the south end here in the proposed retained. A site evaluation report and environmental impact study were submitted as part of the application, and a peer review of the study was conducted and provided comments that were incorporated into an updated study. That updated study has not been finalized. That is, the peer review has not fully accepted the revised study, which is why planning is recommending deferral. Here you can see a better sketch of what is proposed. Here's the proposed severed, and here's the proposed retained. Here's the existing dwelling that I referenced earlier. There's boathouse and docks. Here you can see the docks in the aerial. As I mentioned earlier, the site evaluation and environmental impact study has been prepared. I will let you know what all these colors mean. So this blue along the shoreline is type 2 fish habitat. The yellow here is type 1 fish habitat. This sort of bumblebee looking striped area along the shoreline is the proposed docking location. So you know there's two options that the EIS has identified. All of this red hatching here is environmental constraint areas. So those would be, if this application is approved, those would be zoned environmental protection, everything in this red hatching. And you'll note there's an area here that's purple that's also within that hatching. And then the sort of crisscross hatch is proposed to be the development envelope. So anything in this area here or at the southern end here has been identified in the EIS to be appropriate for development. Some site photos are included here. So here's a photo of type 1 fish habitat on the severed lot. To the right, same thing, but on the retained lot, it's type 1 fish habitat. You can see existing structures over here. That's the dock. That was the boathouse identified on the survey. This is the severed lot on the left here, representative of the type 2 habitat. You'll note all the barren rock on this tip of the island. Here, type 2 fish habitat on the retained, or sorry, severed again, near one of the proposed docking locations. As far as the planning goes, the PPS designates it rural lands. It is designated waterfront in the district official plan with wetlands, cold water lake, endangered and threatened species at risk identified, type 1 and type 2 fish habitat, and moderate to high archaeological potential. I would like to note that the district submitted comments last week on this application and additionally identified that it is within a potential wildfire hazard area and that they are additionally requesting deferral pending an identification of the trees on the area and mitigation measures for fire hazard. We come to the township's official plan. It's designated waterfront, and many of the layers of the district plan are carried through. It's within the Wawa-Tacey coastal waterfront community and additionally within the Tadanac ecosystem special policy area. It is zoned shoreline residential island type 2. So when we get to the analysis, this consent and recreational dwelling is permitted within all layers of the policy, subject to all of those layers identified in the previous slide being addressed satisfactorily, and that mostly pertains to environmental issues. In this case, which is why we are recommending deferral pending finalization of that study, which now the district is additionally requesting that it addresses wildfire hazards. So in summary, we're recommending deferral of the application, subject to that information being provided. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And we did hear that from our Secretary Treasurer about correspondence. And I noticed that we have Mr. Jackson in attendance. Is there anything, sir, that you'd like to add to what the planner has provided so far?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I'm being heard, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, all. I have actually both Kevin Matthews and Llewellyn Matthews, who represent the property, in attendance as well. So if there's something they may wish to add, Mr. Chairman, they're available in terms of answering questions. As the planner indicated, the application is coming forward to deal with an estate matter. And it goes back perhaps almost a year to when it was initiated, and there's been a number of representations made with the staff along the way and pre-consultations, etc. What we've done all along the way is try to be sure to cover all the bases, tick all the boxes, if you like, that have been presented to us. One that was a bit the last minute of sorts was the question of wildfire hazard assessments. This wasn't brought up at any point in the consultations we had with the municipality. I'm not sure how often these are requested, because it seems odd to suggest that a typical pine covered island property on Georgian Bay would have this sort of genuine fire assessment risk. I have done them inland where the typical boreal forest type fuels are relevant, and I just not sure that this is something that one would typically see as an island initiative necessary. So I'm not sure if the committee's had any experience with these assessments. I've done them, and it could be done. It just doesn't seem to have any particular merit, at least not in the 11th hour that it came forward. So I leave that with you. Perhaps you can, ask a question or two in that regard. All the environmental concerns that came out of the peer review, we've scrambled to respond to, and I think we have adequately responded to them. I think that they demonstrate the property is fortuitously quite suitable to be divided more or less in half, which will resolve the family going forward with the Matthews estate. I think that our preference obviously would be to ask the committee to exercise the discretion to move forward. It's simply a matter of trying to get this kind of behind us. And I think that in my world, we've shown through the due diligence that you've got really a land division here that will in fact have ticked all the boxes off. So we're hoping you would go forward, but maybe if it's not a comfort zone you're in, it's probably not the end of the world. But again, these things have a tendency to drag on if they're not dealt with. But I'm not sure if Kevin or Llewellyn might have anything to add, Mr. Chairman, but I thank you very much for certainly allowing the application to go forward in terms of understanding it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your input there. If the owners do have any comments they'd like to add, this would be the time to do that. Seeing none, I would, I don't see, Madam Secretary, members of the public in attendance at this point. So if we have no further questions of the applicant at this point, I will close the public session and bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns.
Hello,
And
do I have a chance to, it's Llewellyn Matthews here. Just trying to figure out how to unmute myself here.
okay, that's quite all right. We've all been there several times, so pardon me for not waiting. Go ahead, Mr. Matthews, with any comments you may have.
Yeah, as we've been sort of at this for a while, it's really an effort to settle my mother's estate and try to get it closed. We can't really proceed with settling the estate because this is the largest asset, and her wish was that the property be divided between the siblings here, with providing my brother the north half. So it's sort of holding everything up. We've been at this for a year now, I think. And so it's a little bit frustrating on our part. And we're just hoping at this point, we're not asking to develop anything in specific. We're just asking for the property to be severed. We recognize that, you know, the township needs to be satisfied that it is potentially, there is the potential to develop it at some point in the future. And we think the report has demonstrated that. The outstanding comments that have come from the peer review and the district are technical aspects that I would think would be, certainly I understand you'll require a site development plan when development is requested. And all those technical aspects can certainly be addressed and looked at in more detail once there's some sort of firm development plan. But at this stage, in terms of just making a decision as to whether the property can be divided, nothing that has been requested to be provided. Further information would affect your ability to make that decision, or I think change your decision. So that's why we're sort of hoping that, you know, if you are able to make a decision and move forward, we would hope that rather than have it drag on for another month or two. As I say, our understanding is it's just some additional detailed technical information that's being accepted, nothing that, you know, and what type of fish habitat it is in terms of it's all type 2, but what the degree, what the slope of the rock is, or what the substrate, you know, how deep it is not, I don't think, going to actually change your decision as to whether it's acceptable or not. So I guess that's why as John said, we're hoping in order to allow us to settle the estate, we would hope that you could make a timely decision on this. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And I see Kevin Matthews raising his hand there, and you're unmuted. Good. All right.
There we go. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd just like to add to my brother's comment. I think the thing that has caught us a little off guard in this exercise is that, you know, there's a whole lot of questions and comments and so on in the peer review that, you know, have come back on the development of, you know, where would you put your road in to, you know, go build your house, you know, from the shoreline, and where would you put your dock, and where you think those kinds of things, and physically where would you put your house. And we haven't got there yet. As people know, building in this environment is a little bit unsavory these days as the world is kind of spiraling out of control. So building is not something that we have considered per se yet. And so, as my brother Llewellyn pointed out, our main objective is to sever the lot so we can complete the estate wishes and activities. And then we would, you know, key was to identify, could we even build on the property in the first place, which I think the report identifies, yes, we can. But we really haven't taken it any further than that. And would hope that you guys could find a way to, you know, let us keep going on the path we're on.
Okay, appreciate your comments. And seeing no members of the public in attendance. I'll close the public session of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good, okay. I understand the predicament of the Matthews brothers and trying to clear up the estate. I guess I also have concerns if both district and township is requesting a deferral. There must be some sort of solid reason for that. So I personally would be more in favor of supporting deferral at this point.
Okay, thank you. Member Demke.
Thank you, Chair Hill. My initial concern on this was more the last statement on the thing that came in from the planner regarding the species at risk. And that was sort of the main concern that I had with supporting deferral. Understanding what the Matthews have said, the question of the species at risk, when you that would be the time when you would look at that. However, again, what Mr. Member Matthews said, with two major areas recommending deferral, there's probably a lot more in it. And at this point, I would still like to see what the district has to say on the supporting the deferral.
Okay, thank you. Member Ferguson. Mike, you are muted.
There is no doubt that this is one of the most complicated applications that we have seen with respect to all the various studies and requirements by both the township and the district. And I think given the size of those questions and studies and peer reviews that need to be done, that I would be in favor of deferral until we have all the information with which to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Member Caddo.
Thanks, Chair Hill. I had a write up last week. I was working the area, just had a look around up there, and it's definitely a beautiful spot and more than enough room to sever it as far as I'm concerned. But I'll agree with my fellow members, and I'd vote for deferral for sure, because I like to see the two reports.
Thank you. Member Kuchar.
I think you're well defined that mute button, doesn't it? Thank you, Chair Hill. I'm quite sympathetic to the circumstances the Matthew brothers find themselves in, and you know, under normal circumstances, I would say if I were to vote in favor of this application, it would be subject to the studies being completed. So that's almost the same thing as deferring it, because they won't get the final answer until those studies are completed. Because I don't see any other reason not to approve. So I would definitely vote in favor of deferral. But I think in my mind, there's relatively little doubt, presuming those studies are completed to everybody's satisfaction, that they meet all the other conditions for deferral in my mind. Thank you. Sorry for passing in my mind. I apologize.
Thank you, Member Kuchar. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, a bit of a conundrum here from my perspective. I know the property, having been by it many times, and I see it as no different than any other coastal property on the in the Georgian Bay. In which case, I'm going to ask a question of our planner. Jen, this letter from the District of Muskoka and the MNRF regarding a generalized wildland fire hazard risk, that is a new animal in my book of stuff that we've seen here at Committee of Adjustment. Is that something that's relatively new in the area, or are you familiar with it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Jarvis. It's my first time seeing it. But as everybody knows, I'm relatively new to Georgian Bay. My hope is, because there's already been pretty significant environmental review of the property, which included classifying trees into different ecosystems, that it wouldn't be too much more difficult to kind of categorize those for the wildland hazard. But I'm not exactly sure what the district's expectations are in terms of a deliverable. I've never seen one of those reports, but I'm hopeful that it's not too much of an additional burden since the trees have already been looked at.
Yeah, I've looked at those trees many times. And they look like trees. I'm really kind of confused here. In my mind, this is a perfectly normal application in many respects. This letter regarding the generalized wildland fire hazard risk really throws a wrench into things. I know the other study, we're still awaiting results on that, but under normal circumstances, I'd have no problem passing this. I will cede to the sort of the common thinking here of the committee and go for deferral, but I feel badly for the Matthews, because in my mind, there's no reason to move ahead with the severance, but those are my comments.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Having heard your comments, and if there are no other further questions, I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment receives Development Services Report 2022-55 and hereby recommends deferral of consent application B21-22 as advertised until finalization of updated study prepared by Frycorp Environmental Services has been conducted. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried and the application is deferred. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Member Matthews.
Thank you. I'm afraid I think I'm about to lose signal here. So if I drop off, it's not out of rudeness, it's just out of technology. So
yes, I understand, and if you do leave, we appreciate you going out of your way to attend and at the beginning as well. So thank you for that, and duly noted. Our next application is a combination of two applications, actually. A B22-05 is a consent application for 1272 Haskets Drive, and A22-13 is a minor variance application for 1272 Haskets Drive. So if we could have the planning report over to you. And I understand our applicant is, I see Lisa there.
We have the agent in attendance as well, Giovanni Tarantino.
Okay.
Can I proceed?
Yes, please do.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Ranzini. I'm a planner with Variances and Associates, and I will be speaking to this application. Just allow me to share my screen here with you. Hoping everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
So this is a minor variance and a severance application, which we will consider together. The applicant for the severance and minor variance are Ron and Sharon Seaburn. Their agent is Giovanni Tarantino, and the address for the subject property is 1272 Haskets Drive. The purpose of this application is to facilitate a lot line adjustment to address a driveway encroachment by severing about 33 square meters from the rear of the subject property and adding it to the abutting property at 1264 Haskets Drive. This severance will result in a lot area deficiency on the subject property, and a concurrent minor variance application has been submitted to address this deficiency. Here's the location of the subject property. It is generally located east of Highway 400 within the 6 Mile Lake inland waterfront community area on the shoreline of 6 Mile Lake. The subject property has an area of approximately 0.45 hectares and a frontage of approximately 64 meters on the shoreline. So here's an aerial view of the subject property. The property is outlined in red, is currently occupied by a cottage, a bunkie, a garage, a boathouse, and 2 docks. The benefiting lands are outlined in yellow. So here's a plan of survey showing the proposed severance. The applicant is proposing to sever sever part 1 on your screen, which is located towards the rear of the subject property, and they intend to add it to the abutting property located to the east. This severance for lot addition will address an existing driveway encroachment. So here are photos from the visit that staff conducted on June 23rd. Both photos on the screen show the proposed severed lands. Here are some more photos. The first one shows the existing development on the subject property, while the second photo shows the existing development on the benefiting lands. So here's an overview of the planning data associated with the subject property. The property is considered rural lands in context of the PPS. It is designated waterfront in the district official plan. The property is adjacent to Long Lake wetland, which is a provincially significant wetland. Additionally, deer wintering area and moderate to high potential for archaeological resources is identified on the subject property. The property is designated rural and waterfront in the township official plan. Provincially significant wetland is identified adjacent to the property, and type 2 fish habitat are identified on the subject adjacent to the subject property. I'd like to note here that though this application has through this application, no new lot is being created, no land use being changed, and no development is proposed. Staff have therefore not requested any studies at this time to address any of the above identified designations adjacent to or on the subject property. Lastly, the property is zoned shoreline residential type 6 in the township zoning bylaw. Here's a planning analysis for the proposed severance. The applicant's proposal is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the district official plan, as existing residential uses are permitted on the subject property and benefiting lands. The proposal has no negative impact on the surrounding development and addresses a driveway encroachment. The existing residential uses are also permitted on these lands as per the township official plan. Additionally, section I.4.2 notes that consents for legal or technical reasons, such as lot line adjustments, may be permitted. The proposed severance has the potential to impact, with respect to the zoning bylaw, the proposed severance has the potential to impact the lot coverage, rear yard setback, and lot area of the subject property. As you can see on the screen, the existing development will continue to comply with the applicable lot coverage and rear yard setback provisions post the severance. The minimum lot area requirement for a lot in SR6 zone is existing. By severance of 33 square meters, the lot will become deficient in this requirement. The applicant has addressed this through a concurrent minor variance application, which I will discuss in the next slide. So here's an overview of the planning analysis for the minor variance. The minor variance maintains the general intent of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted on the subject property and benefiting lands. The minimum required area for a lot in SR6 zone is existing. The proposed minor variance for reduction of 33 square meters does not impact the compliance of the existing development with regards to lot coverage or rear yard setback. As such, the intent of the zoning bylaw for the development of these lands is maintained. The proposal is desirable for appropriate development of land, and as it addresses an existing driveway encroachment and has no negative impacts on the surrounding development, existing environmental features, or shoreline views. Lastly, the proposal is for 0.7% decrease in lot area, which is considered minor. I would also like to note that all existing development on the subject property is legal. Additionally, it is our understanding that the development on the benefiting lands was undertaken in 1940s and 50s. These uses are therefore legal non-complying. These matters have not been further addressed through this review. Based on the analysis presented today, staff are recommending that the committee approve this application with the recommended conditions that you can see on your screen, which include payment of municipal taxes, preparation and registration of a reference plan, submission of an in-preparation draft deed if applicable, and payment of fees and disbursements if applicable. That's the end of my presentation, then I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have now.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
2 letters of no objection were received from the District of Muskoka and Hydro One.
Thank you. And I see we have a representative of the applicant in attendance. Mr. Tarantino, is there any comment you would like to add to what the planner has supplied so far?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for hearing our application. The only thing that we'd like to add is that my mother-in-law, Elaine Jackson, and her husband, Marshall Jackson, were one of the original owners of the property. They have had access through the driveway for literally over 30 years. So all we're trying to do is simply purchase the necessary property so we don't encroach into our neighbor. And so having said that, we'd like to thank the staff that have made this possible, and we hope that you will render a favorable response.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Jackson, is there anything that you wish to add? And you are muted. There you are.
No, I think that's been covered. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any members of the public in attendance. So with that, I will close the public session part of the application and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I have no problem with this. I do have a problem with the report and the proposal, Gerson. You indicate that the as a result of the severance, the retained area of the subject property will be deficient in lot area requirements. But in fact, it already is deficient in lot area requirements. Is that not correct?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Jarvis, the requirement for existing lots in SR6 zone is existing. So whatever is existing is the minimum requirement. If you're creating a new lot, then the requirement is 8,000 square meters. So in this case, it was not deficient because it is an existing lot and not a new lot. So now they're reducing it further by 33 square meters down from existing. So then it becomes deficient and a minor variance is required to address that.
Okay. I don't see it. Yeah, okay. I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. I have no problem with the application.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Coutier.
Come on. Boy, I have to click the mouse 3 times to get myself unmuted. This is computers. I refuse to get too excited about a lot being reduced by less than 3/4%. At least that's what my math says. This to me is just legalizing situations that existed forever, and as the report says, doesn't change anything. And I only regret that it takes so much paperwork to get it done. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Member Coutier. Member Caddo.
Yes, definitely support this.
Thank you. Member Ferguson.
I echo the thoughts of Member Coutier. This is just clearing up a problem that has existed for many, many years, and I'm totally in support of it.
Thank you. Member Demkew.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I visited the property and I'm fully supportive of the motion.
Thank you. I think we may have lost Member Matthews. So
I can speak for him if you like.
We will you proceed with the recommendations that we have so far. That in this case, we were responding to the first part of this application, which was the consent application. And as a matter of procedure, we will vote on the consent application and then address the minor variance. So if I may, I will read the the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves consent application B22-05 for 1272 Haskets Drive, subject to the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, a reference plan of the consent shall be prepared and duly registered by the Ontario Land Surveyor, and one copy filed with the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. A draft copy of the reference plan should be provided to the Secretary Treasurer for review and approval prior to registration on title. A copy of the electronic registration in preparation draft deed for the lot addition, if applicable, shall be provided to the Secretary Treasurer of the committee together with a signed acknowledgement and direction so that the consent certificates may be issued. D, that severed land shall be added to and not be separately conveyed from the property municipally known as 1264 Haskets Drive. The owner's solicitor shall take all necessary steps to ensure that the parcels are not separately conveyable. Minor variance, E, minor variance application A22 is approved. F, that all fees and disbursements, legal, engineering, and planning, if any, incurred by the township with respect to this application shall be paid for by the owner. And G, conditions set herein shall be completed within 2 years of the date of the decision of the committee. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. The next resolution has to do with the minor variance part of this application. So I'm going to ask very quickly for your response. We'll begin with Member Jarvis.
No further comment. I'm in favor of the minor variance.
Okay. Member Kuchar.
Ditto.
Member Caddo.
Yeah, well, no problem.
Member Ferguson.
No problem.
Member Demkew.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A22-13 for 1272 Haskets Drive to permit a decrease in lot area coverage of 33 square meters, subject to the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date, and B, that approval of this variance expires 2 years from the date of decision if the consent application for consent B2205 has not been issued. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried.
Mr. Chair, do you mind, can I just comment? I don't recall seeing the two separate motions. Is that something I just missed, or was that a development after we got the report?
There were two separate applications, Member Jarvis. One was the consent application and the other was the minor variance. So
yeah.
From a procedural standpoint, we had to deal with them separately.
Right. No, I understand that. But so were there two motions within the staff report that we got?
Member Chair, I can take over if you'd like. Member Jarvis, we updated the resolutions after the report had gone out just to be sure that we were including that minor variance. So these were updated after we received the reports.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson and Mr. Tarantino. And we will make sure that we are ready for the next application, which is our next application is A21-10 for 12494 Georgian Bay Shore. And to the planner, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is my first presentation with the Committee of Adjustments. I'm also a planning consultant with JLR Research. So thank you for having me, and I'll be presenting the following two minor variance applications today. So let me just share my screen. All right, can everybody see the presentation?
Not yet. We don't see it. We are seeing the entire slide deck. So if you're able to put that in, there we go. Now we're good.
All right, we're good. Okay, perfect. Sometimes things take a second. Okay. All right, so again, thank you. So the minor variance application A2110, labeled as Kelsey. So applicant Paul Kelsey, and the address is 12494 Georgian Bayshore. So the purpose of the application is to seek relief from maximum lot coverage zoning provisions for an existing residential dwelling, addition, and attached deck from 7% to 8%. So the subject waterfront property is located on the north shore of North Bay, approximately 3 kilometers northeast of the community core area of Honey Harbor. The applicant has recently purchased and closed the original shore road allowance. The subject property has an area of approximately 0.1 hectares and a frontage of approximately 38 meters on the shoreline of North Bay. The property has an existing 1-story residential dwelling with an attached open deck that was originally built between 2008 and 2013. Construction of a legal addition started approximately 2018, and the subject property hosts rocky terrain with limited suitable space for recreational enjoyment outside of the open deck and the dock. You can see I've brought in both site plans here. So the requested variance would facilitate relief from zoning provisions regarding maximum lot coverage and will not result in any physical changes to the land or the structures. On the left of the screen here, you can see the original proposal of the addition and the proposal to remove a portion of the deck to meet lot coverage. And then on the right, you can see the completed building as it is now with the addition and then the open deck. In order to finalize a building permit for the addition, the applicant is seeking minor relief for lot coverage, and the attached open deck is existing, and the demolition to reduce lot coverage by 1% will incur additional disproportionate costs, both financial and environmental. So we have some site photos here, looking at the back of the home where the deck is raised, and then here is each side of the house, one looking towards the front and one looking towards the lake. So staff are recommending approval of the application. We are of the opinion that the application conforms and does not conflict with any of the applicable planning policies. So for the policy framework, it is located on rural lands. It is waterfront area in both district and township, and it is shoreline residential type 1. The requested variance would facilitate relief, but there are no physical changes required for the land or the structures. The residential dwelling is approximately 130 square meters, and the attached open deck is approximately 40 square meters, which brings the total to 170 square meters, which equals 8%, while the maximum is 7% in SR1. So the first test is whether it's appropriate and desirable development, and the requested variance is an administrative process for lot coverage, allowing the residents to have reasonable enjoyment of the natural and cultural heritage without having to facilitate any additional development or site alteration, is appropriate and desirable for both this subject property and surrounding heritage. In terms of being minor, the requested increase from 7% to 8% is an increase in 22 square meters. The dwelling and the attached deck are existing, and the applicant's final stages of the building permit closure for their legal addition. The alternative to granting an increased lot coverage is to demolish a portion of the existing structures. So the intent and the purpose of the official plan. So section D 1.6.5 states that development and site alteration shall not be permitted in fish habitats. However, shoreline development on fish are not proposed in terms of this minor variance application, and therefore there's no anticipated impacts on the fish habitat. Oops. Section F. 0.582 states that the goal of the community-specific policies is to protect natural heritage, preserve recreational amenities, and to maintain character of the area. So as mentioned before, there are no anticipated adverse impacts to the character or aesthetic from this specific application. And finally, the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There are minimal policies that actually address maximum lot coverage in the absence of site alteration and development. So the intent of the maximum lot coverage provision is to limit development to protect natural and cultural features. So in this case, there's no anticipated negative impacts. And given the above, planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance maintains the general intended purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. So finally, we have here, so minor variance application for Kelsey. We are recommending approval based on the following conditions. Thank you again. That's the end of my presentation. Jen and I are both available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Alyssa. That was a very good introduction to the Committee of Adjustment here. Appreciate your work on this application. I would ask the Secretary Treasurer at this point, has there been any correspondence on this application?
One letter of no objection was received from Hydro One.
Okay. I see some additional people in attendance. Is there anyone from the applicant, representing the applicant, would have any further comments to add to what the planner has provided so far?
Hi, my name's Kim Roach. I'm Paul Kelsey's wife, and no, there's nothing else we need to add at this time. Just excited to get this completed. So thanks for everybody's help here.
Okay, and seeing no members of the public, I will close the public part of the application, bring the application before the committee for question or comment, and we'll begin with Member Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I assume that other than the overage to the total lot coverage, that all other conditions, the setbacks are all within line or within the bylaws?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, everything else is met except for the lot coverage.
Thank you very much. This is certainly not a huge lot to begin with. And I do agree with you. I think the extra going from 7 to 8% is not a huge jump in size of cottage, and I can support this application.
Thank you, Member Ferguson. Member Caddo.
Yeah, I just had one question. I'm in support of it, no problem there. But like something like this, should not the building department catch this before they issue a permit that it is oversized and for lot coverage? Should that not be taken into consideration before they issue a building permit?
So when the building permit was issued, everything was up to all of the provisions. When they had originally proposed to remove part of the deck, Once that changed, then that's when this minor variance application came to. So this is us addressing it before it's closed. It wasn't an issue when the building permit was originally assigned.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm in support of it, no problem.
Thank you. Member Demkew?
Yeah, I'm totally in support of this.
Thank you. Member Coutier?
With apologies to everyone, I can't quite understand why in our resolution that one of the conditions that building permits has to be issued in the next 3 years. To the best of my knowledge, the building permit has been well issued, and the only concern here is the building permit being closed. So it seems like a redundant condition, so it doesn't have any relevance, so it won't change my mind. I presume what happened here is they put the addition on and they planned on getting rid of the deck, and at a certain point said, we'd rather keep the deck. Totally understandable. And I have zero issue and happy to approve the recommended motion, regardless of whether Part C is in there or not.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Coutier. Member Jarvis?
A bit of a contrarian here. So as I understand things, approval was given to a cottage addition, and there was an agreement at that time that part of the deck would be removed, so the cottage lot coverage would meet the requirements of the code. And once the cottage gets built, the owner decides that, they want to keep that part of the deck they said they would take off. In essence, seeking forgiveness as opposed to seeking permission is the way I'm looking at it. So in the basic principle, I'm against this. I agree, it's all very, very minor. Lot size is small to begin with, and 1% more on the, obviously for that building, it doesn't amount to a whole heck of a lot. But there's a principle here in that we approve something on certain principles, and those have been thrown aside, so that part of a deck that was supposed to come off doesn't come off. And I'm not sure I understand that, and I'm therefore not in favor of approving this request.
Okay, thank you, Member Jarvis. I visited the site as well, and I can see where that the deck had been in existence prior to the addition going on, and certainly where it's located, and from what you could see in the pictures that were supplied by the planning staff, the deck is virtually not visible from the water. It's the profile that it's on hides it quite a bit. So I am in favor of the application. So with that, I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment approves minor variance application A21-10 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 12494 Georgian Bay Shore to permit a maximum lot coverage of 8% where 7% is permitted, subject to the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, that the approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application. And C, that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The resolution or the application is approved. Thank you very much for your attendance. And we will now move to our next application, which is A21-34 for 83 John Buckler Road. And I'll just make sure that everybody who is has requested attendance is here. Looks like we are good to go. And to the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Just getting myself set up here. Okay, can everyone see the full
We're seeing the
presentation?
whole slide deck at this
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Okay,
So
there we go.
let me know when.
Looks good now.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so thank you for having me. This is my second presentation, the community adjustments. Today we're here to talk about minor variance application A2134. So the applicant is Ji Jiang Paul Wang, and the agent is Amy Powell with Powell Planning and Associates. The address of the subject property is 83 John Buckler Road. So basically the overview is to convert an existing underutilized framed cottage to a dryland boathouse, which requires relief from zoning provisions for maximum building height and maximum building width for a dryland boathouse. The subject property is legally described as part of Lot 14, Concession 10, Plan M235 in the Township of Georgian Bay, and it's generally located on the western shore of 6 Mile Channel. The subject property is rectangular with an area of approximately 0.6 hectares and a frontage of approximately 68 meters on the shoreline. The subject property is bisected by John Buckler Road. You can see that right here. And has an existing seasonal dwelling, private septic system, privy, framed cottage, deck, and dock. You can see the main dwelling here, and this is the location of the soon-to-be dryland boathouse proposed. So here is the site plan. So you can see the layout of the property. You have the cottage, which is now finished, and then the old frame cottage, which is being proposed as a dryland boathouse. So this is everything that is existing. Here you have images of the plan and elevations. There are no exterior changes being proposed, only interior changes. We have site photos of the subject property. This is heading down to the frame cottage and down the stairs. And then you can see the retained wall, the rock structure, and then the front of the boathouse or the front of the frame cottage near the shore. So staff are recommending approval of the application. We are of the opinion that the subject application conforms and does not conflict to any policies with the Planning Act and test for minor variance. So provincial policy statement describes it as rural lands. It is waterfront area and it is waterfront area with the district official plan and the township official plan, and it is zoned shoreline residential type 1. So for dryland boathouses on frontages greater than 61 meters, there's a requested maximum building height, which is existing, of 4.7 meters, while the permitted is 4. And then the maximum building width for dryland boathouses existing is 13.4 meters, while permitted is 10.3. To facilitate this proposal, the applicant requires relief from section 4.1.12.4 dryland boathouses and would provide relief from zoning provisions for maximum building height and maximum building width. So for being appropriate and desirable, there's no exterior development or site alteration being proposed. The structure only requires interior renovations to convert for use as a dryland boathouse instead of a framed cottage. The intent of the dryland boathouse is to provide storage with an existing structure for the permitted residential use, which is desirable and appropriate for waterfront development. Secondly, is it minor? The applicant is seeking relief again for accessory building height and width. Since the accessory structure is already existing and only interior renovations are required to accommodate storage. Again, there's no anticipated negative impacts to the character or the natural heritage of the region. The intent and purpose of the official plan, so shoreline development and or site alteration are not proposed. Therefore, there's no anticipated negative impacts on the fish habitat specifically. From a planning perspective, section D.241 states that a portion of the Trent Severn waterway is located within the township, and there's a possibility that the proposed permit will be subject to the in-water shoreline works permit from Parks Canada. And for the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, again, it is zoned shoreline residential type 1, which states that permitted uses include accessory buildings or structures alongside the principal use. And dryland boathouses specifically stating that are permitted within 20 meters of the high water mark, and the building meets all other zoning provisions for a dryland boathouse. As the frame cottage is an existing structure seeking zoning relief to be utilized as a dryland boathouse through eventually a change of use permit, there are no anticipated issues regarding the height and width of this specific structure. So with that, staff are recommending approval based on the following conditions, and that is the end of my presentation. And again, Jen and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Madam Secretary, have there been any correspondence on this application?
One letter of no objection was received from Alex McLeod requesting that the structure not to be used as a living area or rental.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any representative of the applicant in attendance, and would they like to add comment to what the planner has provided so far?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, and members of the public in attendance. My name is Amy Powell, and I'm the Chief Planning Officer at Powell Planning and Associates. I'm a registered professional planner and the agent representing the landowner Paul Wang this morning at this Committee of Adjustment hearing for the minor variance application submitted concerning 83 John Buckler Road in Georgian Bay Township. As consulting staff have well summarized in accordance with Department File Number A21-34 in relation to Report 2022-54 and the supporting information submitted for the subject lands pertaining to an existing shoreline residential lot that is an existing frame cottage that is being proposed to be used as a dryland boathouse in order to achieve a higher and better use of the subject lands. The variances here being sought are minor in nature in accordance with staff's recommendation, and they're being sought with regards to relief for height as well as the building width for the subject structure that is existing. I'd like to emphasize and thank staff, consulting staff for noting that this structure will absolutely be used for storage only and not for human habitation. The proposal offers a permitted use on site that is compatible with the surrounding areas, as well as local and provincial planning direction. The subject site is largely surrounded by other shoreline residential uses, which are compatible, and there's no offense to the streetscape based on the two existing structures on the subject lands. Through comments received by township staff following our minor variance application submission, we support staff's recommendations and the resulting conditions attributed to the proposal's approval. We also like to thank the committee members as well as township staff for completing their review of the subject application. We appreciate the committee's time this morning and are happy to answer any questions on the subject file.
Thank you very much, Ms. Powell. I see Mr. Wang is also in attendance. Is there anything that you wish to add to Ms. Powell's comments, Mr. Wang?
Yes, thank you very much. Is my camera on?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, there you are.
Okay. Yeah, so the only thing I want to add is my property is very steep in front of the water. So this will give us some room to store our kayak, and also a very nice seating area if we want, because you can see from the picture, the thing like almost 45-degree into the water. So if I want to store anything, it's very hard to build any shed or whatever for storage. For the past few years, I just stack my kayaks on the dock over the winter. So this really will give me a very good feature for this purpose. And I also talked to my neighbor around. We had the road association meeting last week and talked to everyone. And so I told them this will be just storage. I have no plan to rent it out. I have no plan to put people there for living. So like everyone was okay with that. So that's the only thing I want to add. Thank you very much again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wang. Seeing no members of the public, I'll close the public session and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And there
are members of the public present who would like to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. And is that Mr. Morgan?
Mr. Morgan, yes, he's here and he'd like to make comments.
Okay, very well. Please proceed, Mr. Morgan.
Good morning. Thanks for hearing from me today. My name is Josh Morgan. I'm a registered professional planner with Morgan Planning and Development based in Aurelia. I'm here today representing 5 property owners, being the owners of 24 Memory Lane, 27 Memory Lane, 28 Memory Lane, 33 Memory Lane, and 49 Memory Lane. There are some of those folks are actually in attendance here as well and may want to say a few words. So I just wanted to, I suppose, raise a couple of concerns and ask a couple of questions. So first of all, just for clarity, it's my understanding that the dwelling on the property, building permit was issued for the dwelling on the property in 2016. That's the new dwelling. And at the same time, a demolition permit was issued for the structure that we're here to speak about today. So that would have been 5 or 6 years ago. And my understanding is that the permit for the dwelling was only issued with the understanding that the structure we're here to talk about today would be removed or I suppose converted. So here we are 6 years later, kind of finally getting at that. So before representing or coming before you today, I've reviewed Ms. Powell's planning and justification report. I reviewed the staff report and reviewed site pictures, which were taken by my clients viewing the property from the water on 6 Mile Channel. So I think what's important to understand here is that these minor variances are predicated upon obviously this structure being used as a dryland boathouse. So in order to understand that, I had to review the definition of a dryland boathouse in the zoning bylaw. So I'll just read that for the committee's benefit and those that are listening. So the definition of a dryland boathouse means an accessory building used for the storage of marine vessels, other forms of watercraft and boating equipment, all-terrain vehicles and snowmobiles, which is not located within nor does have water access to a water body. A dryland boathouse shall not include living space for human habitation or sleeping space. So I think that it's accurate to say that the primary concern expressed to my client or by my clients to myself is that the existing structure will not actually be used as a dryland boathouse. Rather, it will function as a sleeping cabin or perhaps a rec room or perhaps even a dwelling unit. And so when I heard their concerns, and take a look at some of the pictures of this boathouse, it does seem like it would be quite challenging to actually utilize the main floor of this structure as a dryland boathouse. It has extremely steep stairs to get up to the storage area as illustrated in the building drawings, which were part of the staff presentation. It has very small doors, just regular pedestrian doors in order to get into the structure. So really the ease of storing things like kayaks and paddle boards or any type of marine vessel really within this structure, I think is entirely questionable. It definitely seems likely or possible that kayaks and whatnot could be stored under the structure, but if that's where those that's where those marine vessels will be stored, then what is the upstairs going to be used for? So I guess that's our primary concern, just that this building actually won't be used as a dryland boathouse because it just physically wasn't built to be a dryland boathouse. And then a secondary concern relates to the size of the proposed conversion. So obviously both of these minor variances speaks to the size. One speaks to the height, just a modest increase from 4 meters, I believe it is, to 4.7 meters, which recognizes the existing condition. The other minor variance relates to the width of this structure. So the width of the structure is, I think, 13.4 meters, and the zoning bylaw requires a maximum, or provides for a maximum of 10.3 meters. So that's over a 30% increase in the width. So there's some question that we have as to whether that would actually be considered minor in nature. So I've expressed a concern with regards to what the structure will actually be used for and what it could actually be used for based on its existing built form. And the second concern being that the structure itself appears to be anyway very similar in size to the dwelling, to the primary dwelling, which begs the question, is this structure actually accessory in nature? So, in order to approve these applications, the committee needs to be satisfied first that this is actually a dryland boathouse, and second, that this structure is accessory in nature to the primary dwelling. So I think I would just have one question, and I'm not sure, I actually have two questions, and I'll pose them, and then I'll let staff or Ms. Powell determine who would answer them. So my first question would be, what tools will the township employ to ensure that the structure will be used as a dryland boathouse and not as a sleeping cabin, a rec room, or a dwelling unit? And then my second question would be, do we know what the gross floor area is of the dwelling in comparison to the gross floor area of the dryland boathouse? Because I think those numbers are important, as they would make it more clear to us whether the dryland boathouse conversion was actually accessory in nature. So I think until such time as we receive that sort of feedback, we would be requesting a deferral of the application. Thank you.
Thank you for that submission, Mr. Morgan. Is there anyone else in attendance from the public who would like to make comment at this time? And I do see several names there. I see none.
I know that Mr. English wanted to say something. He's at his cottage on Memory Lane, which is just east of the subject property, with 4 or 5 of his neighbors, but I'm not sure whether Mr. English is maybe having trouble just taking himself off mute. And if that's the case, Mark, if you can hover your mouse in the bottom left-hand corner of the black screen here, you'll see the microphone and the stop video tabs. You just click on those.
I did see Mark on there earlier, but I don't see him now. I see Catherine Gatzos.
I'm a planner here at the township, sorry. Just watching.
Okay.
I'm wondering if it's possible for the host of the meeting. I'm not sure whether it is possible. I'm wondering. Oh, there's Mark.
Hi.
Oh, there we are. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. English.
Yeah, with my neighbors that Josh referred to earlier. I have a question for Alyssa. Did I hear her say there's a washroom, existing washroom in the proposed property, on the proposed boat, right? Boat. Oh my God. Is there an existing bathroom in that building?
So there's actually been an update in the bylaw in terms of washrooms for dryland boathouse. So I'll let Jen explain that clearly, and that way we all have the information that we need.
Yes, thank you, Alyssa. So it was brought to our attention very recently that there was a bylaw, a housekeeping bylaw that was passed in 2019 that was not consolidated into the zoning bylaw. Therefore, it wasn't fully reflected in our reports, but there is a approved and in effect provision of a zoning bylaw that does not permit washrooms in dryland boathouses. So to that effect, our recommendations have been revised. And one of those recommendations, and if you don't mind, I'll just read it. I know this wasn't in the staff report, and not everyone has been aware of it, so I'll read it for you. It's provision C, and it says, and that a change of use permit be applied for to convert the existing framed cottage to a dryland boathouse, and that all plumbing is removed from the proposed dryland boathouse. So that came out of conversation with our CBO, our chief building official, about how we should best implement the direction of the zoning bylaw. And her recommendation to us was that we make it a condition that all plumbing be removed from that structure. I hope that answers your question, Mr. English.
No, actually, my question is there an actual working bathroom in that structure at the moment?
I see. So my understanding is currently there is, but a condition of this variance would require it to be removed. But I'll let Mr. Wang provide the updated information.
Okay. Yeah, so there is an outhouse. There's an outhouse outside this framed cottage. So inside the cottage, there's no washroom. There's no washroom inside the cottage. So there's an outhouse about like 20 feet away from the cottage.
Mr. Wang, I'm not sure that was the answer. The question had to do with the dryland boathouse, or what was the previous cottage. Is there in fact a washroom in that building?
No.
So is there plumbing? Like do you have running water and that sort of thing?
There is plumbing. So right now it's not working now. So they have an old water pump. So if we need to use it every spring, you have to fill the water into the pipe to get the air out. So I haven't been using that for the last 2 years. So there is plumbing, but if the building bylaw required the plumbing to be removed, I'm more than happy to remove that old system. But there's a pump.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. English?
I have several more.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah, Josh Morgan's comment was, what was the size of the existing structure to the new structure that's been built? And we don't see as neighbors why there would be the requirement to have that large of a structure to hold, as Mr. Wang said, a kayak and some seating cushions. We don't see this. I see this, and so do my neighbors, as an opportunity for the person to get out of having to pay for the dismantling of the building and taking it away by barge, which we've had a couple of people tell us would be in excess of $20,000. So we're concerned about that. We're concerned about the fact that if Mr. Wang sells the cottage, and he may be perfectly in line with doing everything you asked, but what happens if he sells it to Joe Schmo and Joe Schmo turns it into a B&B or turns it into a rental cottage, and there's no control, and each time you've got to reach and make an objection to it.
Okay, we're losing your audio, Mr. English.
Is there, I wanted to know whether or not there is actually an occupancy permit granted so far to the new dwelling.
Okay, did I see your hand up again to answer that?
Yes, sorry, I just lowered it to remove my mute. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. English. I was chatting with the CBO yesterday and confirmed there is no occupancy permit that has been issued yet. And occupancy would allow them to move everything from the existing, the boathouse, the proposed boathouse, to the new cottage, but that has not been issued yet.
Okay, so we have a concern with that because we've been watching for 3 years all of the neighbors, and they've been using the cottage for the last 3 summers. If that's the way that you circumvent an occupancy permit, then I don't see where there's credibility that this thing might not become a rental or some other use contrary to bylaw.
So I can comment on that a little bit for you, Mr. English. It's sort of a comment that we find for most development on the waterfront in Georgian Bay, and that that sort of becomes an enforcement issue. And there are channels that address that specifically. We have a enforcement team at the township, so any complaints go through that channel, and that's sort of the mechanism for that. That's how these uses are enforced.
Okay, well, our group here feel that we should not be rewarding people who do not comply with the existing laws, because they leave credibility issues, and I seriously have a credibility issue that there will be people moving into the main floor, having parties, doing whatever they want with the main cottage up top.
I know that wasn't a question, but I'll just, if you would like, we can forward you the enforcement information so that if that were the case, you would know who to contact. And before your comment or Mr. Morgan's comment gets lost about the GFA comparison, I'm wondering if maybe Ms. Powell, you might have that GFA on deck, sort of kind of throw you out. I just don't want to move past it before we've forgotten to address it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps the landowner could better speak to the size of the two structures of consideration as they have provided the design plans. Paul, would you have those sizes available?
I'm sorry, for the existing, the new building?
For the frame cottage as well as for the existing cottage, one of the residents in attendance is questioning the difference in size, just to make sure that one in fact is primary in nature and one is secondary in nature.
Oh, the one, the new dwelling, just yeah, I started building in 2017. That's about 2,000 square feet. And the existing one, by my memory, I think it's less than probably 500 square feet. The frame, the cottage, the dryland boathouse, basically. So, if you want accurate, I need to pull out the drawing and do a calculation there, but I believe it's 500 square feet for the dryland boathouse.
There was a drawing presented with the application that showed the outline of the proposed dryland boathouse. Does that drawing have dimensions?
Yeah, that I'm just opening here.
Alyssa, you must have that same drawing. I don't know whether it had dimensions on it or not.
Yeah, it's 13. It's a two rectangle shape, basically, 13.37 by 4 meters. So that's 52 square meters, and another part is 4 meters by 3 meters. So it's about 12. Let me use the calculator here. 12 square meters. That's
So roughly 1,200 square feet.
so 64 square meters. 64 meters. I'm sorry, it's 688. It's just but rough calculation from that drawing. So the new one is about 2,000 square feet. And the dryland boathouse is 688. squares.
Okay, does that answer your question, Mr. English?
Mr. Chair, if you could get the planner to put that picture back up so everybody can see it, showing the plan of survey.
Is that possible, Alyssa?
Yep, I can do that right now.
Okay, can everyone see that all right?
Now, if you take the deck off the proposed cottage plan and then compare the GFA to the GFA of the existing original building, you'll see that the footprint is almost identical. We're not here to argue a building that's 20 feet wide and 20 feet deep or something to use as a boathouse. We're arguing the fact that a building basically with the same GFA as the brand new building could be retained by somebody, and who knows what the final intention or use of the building could become. And we're all very concerned about it.
Okay, I think your point is taken in, and as I understand it, the point that you're making is that the proposed retained structure is, in your opinion, excessively large for a boathouse. But I'm not familiar if there's any restrictions or definition put into the bylaw that determines the size of a dryland boathouse. And perhaps, Jen, you could respond to that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the minor variances that have been requested are to address the overages in size of the proposed boathouse.
Yes, as opposed to the applicable overall square footage of it.
Well, Mr. Chair, our position is that it should be rejected on the sense that, let's say it met the existing conditions, that would be one thing. But to have to apply to make it bigger than what's allowable in both height and width, then I think that is enough for the council to say, no, this doesn't meet the intention of a minor variance proposal.
Okay, your point's well taken.
Thank you, sir.
Did you have any other questions or concerns, Mr. English?
No, I think I can leave it at that. Thank you very much for listening to it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything additional that you'd like to add, Mr. Morgan?
Thank you for the opportunity. I suppose just to reiterate that for us, it's not just about the size, really it's about the functionality of the building as a dryland boathouse. It clearly wasn't constructed as a dryland boathouse. It seems very difficult. It seems very challenging to actually use it as a dryland boathouse as defined by the zoning bylaw. I'm not sure how you get an aluminum boat or a paddle board or a kayak up into the area that's defined as, or that's labeled as storage on those drawings. So, it seemed, I understand looking through a zoning bylaw and trying to identify what could that building actually be defined as, which is what we as planners do. But I think that this building does not lend itself to a dryland boathouse as defined in the zoning bylaw. That's the last point that I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And I will go back to the representative of, or to the applicant or his agent, is there anything that you wish to add at this point to the comments that have been made so far?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And listening to comments from neighboring landowners as well as the representative, Mr. Morgan, we heard that the perceived future use of the subject structure is questionable. The benefit is that the municipality does have the ability to have the landowner sign a declaration committing to the use as being presented today as a mechanism to prevent any deviation from the use that's being proposed. Mr. Morgan also mentioned a point of question with regard to does the 3.4 meter variance, or the difference between the 10.3 meters and the 13.4 meters being requested represent a minor variance in nature. The planning justification report as well as staff's analysis have addressed the consistency against the 4 tests of a minor variance that are required under the Planning Act. So I believe that that test and threshold has been evaluated. And with regards to the GFA, absent of having the exact figures to discuss before the committee today, that was never an issue that was flagged through the building department or planning staff through the review of this application. So again, we just want to summarize that the landowner is well intentioned to move forward with utilizing the existing subject structure in accordance with what's been represented and demonstrated today. And we again thank those that had questions for intent of use for bringing those matters to light, as well as consulting staff that have recommended an approval for the application today and for the committee's time. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. If there are no further questions or comments from the public, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we'll begin with Member Jarvis.
Thank you, and really appreciate all the input from everybody on this one. I do have a question for our planners. Mr. Morgan talked about the original application for the new cottage, including the stipulation that the old building be removed, and that was part of the agreement. Can I just have that confirmed that that was indeed the case?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Jarvis, if you don't mind, I'm going to read a response because Kaylee, the CBO, helped me write it and previously provided this to Mr. Morgan yesterday. The building permit aspect, although related to planning, I rely on her expertise in that section. So regarding the demolition permit, Kaylee noted that there are no stipulations for building permits, so it wasn't as if get this permit, you have to demolish this. But because, sorry, Mr. English, I think you're still unmuted.
On the speaker, sorry.
Can you mute your device, please, Mr. English? Thank you.
Okay. So in order, because only one dwelling is permitted on a lot, building would not issue a building permit for the new structure without jointly providing a demolition permit for the proposed boathouse. So those were issued in tandem in 2016 with the understanding that in order to close the building permit for the new cottage, they would either need to follow through on the demolition permit for the existing boathouse, we'll call it that to differentiate, or go through this minor variance process and then a change of use permit. So if they don't go through the process, then that demo permit is the other route.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So it wasn't a condition, but it was there was the understanding at the time of the original application for the new cottage that the old cottage would be coming down.
I would say a recognition that 2 dwellings can't be permitted on the same lot. So the solution would be either go through a planning act process or take it down.
Okay. Okay. And my other question was with regards to lot coverage. Is there no consideration for lot coverage in this, or do the 2 buildings in combination still adhere to lot coverage requirements, or is that an issue?
I can answer that. Lot coverage is not an issue with this application per se.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'm finding myself in sympathy with the cottage owners on Memory Drive and their representative Josh Morgan in this. I think if the understanding was that that building would be coming down, as with the earlier request, I think we're finding it easier to seek forgiveness than seek permission, and I'm against the application as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Caddo.
Thanks, Chair Hill. Yeah, there's a lot of more information than we ever had originally. And I think the same understanding, it's, okay, you build this cottage comes down, fine, carry on. But I don't think that's kind of what they're trying for. And I'm not in support of this application.
Thank you. Member Demkew.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Yes, given everything, I had a lot of questions that kind of were talked about in this. How do you really make this a boathouse when it's such a huge and high area to work with? And hearing everything else that I've heard, especially with the demolition thing, I'm not in support.
Thank you, Member Demkew. Member Ferguson. And Mike, you are muted.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
You know, if we look at the minor variance that we're adjudicating today, the difference in building height is about 2 feet. And the difference in building width is about 10 feet. And converting to the shore boathouse is illegal and an option that is available to the applicant. Unfortunately, when you get down to the back of the cottage on the very steep slope, there was no way to get around and look at the front of the building. And I'm wondering if Mr. Wang has any kinds of plans on how he's going to make access easier to convert this to a shoreland boathouse.
Okay, thank you, Member Ferguson. Member Kuchar.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I'm also having difficulty with this. One is that I understand that it's a dryland boathouse, but I couldn't help but notice in the plans that were offered on the last page of our report, a couple of things. One is that they had drawn in those plans a washroom, though I understand one doesn't exist now. Secondly, there was a screened porch. To me, a screened porch is human habitation. That is not, I don't think a kayak needs a screened porch. And our applicant did say that it's a nice place to sit, closer to the water than the home they've built in the back. I'm also concerned because if we pass this, then we're allowing a dryland boathouse of these oversized dimensions, too high, much higher than necessary, wider than higher and wider than required. And then at that point, the applicant may readily decide that this building is not up to the same standard as the cottage or home that was built behind it, and therefore decide to renovate this, and it would have full permission to renovate this into a very nice building. Technically a dryland boathouse, but it allows him to have a dryland boathouse that's much bigger than would be allowed. And so I have real difficulty with giving permission to a building that, based on the pictures I've seen, has seen better days. And if this individual has built a nice, and I only see one, I'm afraid I wasn't able to make a lot visit, but in the one picture, it looks like there's a very nice building built behind. I presume of 2 stories if it has 2,000 square feet in it. So I find that I would have had more of an appetite to consider this application if it included renovations to the current building to make it much closer to the requirements of our bylaw with regards to the size of a dryland boathouse. Under the circumstances, I'm afraid I'm going to join some of my fellow members in not voting in favor.
Thank you, Member Demke. And I did visit the site as well, and I did climb down to where that what was the prior cottage exists, and I do share and understand the comments from committee members and members of the public so far about not only the intended use, but the condition and so on of that structure that's down there. I do think that the applicant has other options open to him that probably need to be explored. So with all that, if there are no further questions or comments from the committee members, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Ferguson and seconded by Member Demke. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approve minor variance application A21-34 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 83 John Buckler Road to permit a maximum building width for a dryland boathouse of 13.4 meters and a maximum building height of a dryland boathouse of 4.7 meters, subject to the following conditions. Excuse me. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date, and that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application, and that a change of use permit be applied for to convert the existing frame cottage to a dryland boathouse, and that all plumbing is removed from the proposed dryland boathouse, and that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. I would add, all those who are in favor of approval, please raise your hand. And seeing no hands raised, the application is defeated. Thank you. And we will move to the next item on the agenda. Once we've given our coordinator time to adjust attendance. Okay. Thank you. The next item on our agenda will be I have a motion moved by Member Kuchar and seconded by Member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 11:53 until August 12th, 2022 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance today. It's too bad we lost Mr. Matthews along the way, but it seems like it would be a good day to be in Scotland. Good weather-wise.